It's week 2 of the 2010 college football season, and we have big games across the board. And ESPN's calling it Monster Saturday, and Dari Nowkhah is on the line. How are you doing today, Dari?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Pretty well. Well, big games across the board, top 25, non-top 25, and it starts with Georgia, South Carolina. Don't you agree?
In terms of SEC games, there's no question. I mean, that's obviously the big one. The SEC gives us a treat of these conference games like we had on Thursday with Auburn and Mississippi State conference games in the early going. And the Georgia South Carolina game, I think most of us, I think it's almost universal. We see these as the only two teams that can challenge Florida in the East. So, who's going to have the leg up? Is the A.J. Green absence going to hurt Georgia? Is Stephen Garcia going to play a second consecutive really good game for Steve Spurrier? And I think those are all things we're looking forward to seeing.
Well, I totally agree about the Florida aspect. I think that's primarily the decision I made voting Georgia number 1 in the preseason rankings at media days. I'm just not sold on Florida yet, but that can change very quickly, as we all know how the SEC plays out. Let's go to your alma mater, Oklahoma taking on Florida State. It's going to be a great game, probably the best game of the weekend. I kind of like.
You hear me in the airport. It has the potential to be. I mean, it's. I think Miami, Ohio State's going to be. Michigan could be interesting too, but this one, I don't know that we know what to expect out of either team. I think almost much better than the team that beat Utah State by a touchdown last week, and the team that gave up 400 yards of offense to a team that isn't really expected to be competitive in its own league. I don't think that's necessarily the truth of Oklahoma, although and I fear maybe just as an alum of the school is that defensive backfield got burned for big play after big play, and that is where Florida State must be licking its chops. Because we know Christian Ponder can throw it. We know that Christian Ponder has really good on the outside. Now, is Oklahoma going to be able to stay with them? I think that's the key question on that side. In terms of what we don't know about Florida State, everybody wants to get excited about what they did against Stanford, but Dan, that's Stanford, and anybody who takes too much out of that, I think, is really making a mistake as well. I think Florida State offensively is going to be fine. I think Florida State defensively, I think that's what we need to see. And for Oklahoma, they're going to run the ball, and that's the way that right now, I don't think that they're going to put too much in the hands of Landry Jones if DeMarco Murray is able to chew up yards. So I think Oklahoma can have success running. I think Florida State can have success throwing, and I think in the end, I think it's going to be, it may end up being one of the better, fourth quarter type games of the weekend.
I totally agree. I kind of see that game 34-27 in Oklahoma's favor. I'm very high on Oklahoma. I do think the first game jitters were there against Utah State, but when you have a quarterback in Landry Jones that did what he did last year on the spot, basically in and out with Sam Bradford and his health and injury issues, I think it just shows how good of a player he is and can be for the future of Oklahoma football. But going to the next game where ESPN College Game Day will be in Tuscaloosa, Alabama and Penn State. It should be a great game, and they have not faced off since 1990. What's your thoughts and projections on that game?
Well, I think you saying it's a great game is probably more optimistic looking forward to a competitive game than I am. I am having a hard time finding a way that Penn State is really going to be able to hang in with Alabama for 4 quarters. And I'm having a hard time seeing it now. Robert Bowman, true freshman quarterback, first one to ever start at quarterback for Penn State. And he was good. And he was good last week against Youngstown State. And much like, let's not make the mistake of assuming Florida State is a world beater because of what they did. I think we need to be careful making the same assumption about Robert Bowman. While I'm sure he's a good quarterback, and he wouldn't be starting for Penn State if he wasn't, going in a home game against Youngstown State is going to be a different animal, different beast entirely than what he's going to see in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night. It isn't even going to be close. And I think Penn State defensively is still going to have a hard time slowing down Alabama, whether it's the run or the pass. I think Alabama can beat them in both ways. And if an 18-year-old kid like Robert Bolden, who has no experience in big-time games, it does what I have a feeling an 18-year-old kid might do in that situation, I think Penn State could be in for a long night.
It's key words what you stated about being optimistic about that game, and showing that Alabama could blow them out, like a lot of people can. That does think that may happen. When I was in Tennessee this week, primarily all the Tennessee Volunteer fans think they can not even just play with Oregon, they can actually beat Oregon. Now, I don't see that. I keep telling them that they think they're very optimistic. I just don't see that much of a game. What's your thoughts on that game?
Well, I think Tennessee's plus in this is without question 110,000, what have you, in Knoxville. I mean, that can certainly change a game. But the fact of the matter is, as Derek Dooley said before the season, everything's fine with Tennessee except for a lack of depth, a lack of experience, and a lack of proven leadership. Well, okay, so those are key. Those are key parts of the football team. You don't have any of that. You're going to bring in an Oregon team with phenomenal athletes on both sides of the ball, all kinds of speed, especially on offense. So if you match them up on a neutral side, or I'll take Oregon by 3 or 4 touchdowns. In Knoxville, I think it could change a little bit, but I just simply don't see Tennessee having the horses to be able to stay with Oregon. I mean, I think honestly, I think Oregon could score a lot of points in that game. I mean, I would look for something in the 38-24, 38-17 type of ball game, and I think Oregon's better defensively than anybody thinks. I think they see this team that's offensive weapons and numerous tailbacks they have that can do damage, but they can play a little defense too, and I think they may get after that young Tennessee offense.
Well, what's very interesting about the Oregon Ducks, you have Alabama and Ohio State 1 and 2 in the polls, as we all know. If that holds to the truth, Oregon, all they have to do is win this weekend at Tennessee, at USC, and then the Civil War against Oregon State. They could be this year's version of the Auburn 2004 team and could be left out, especially with the Boise State situation. But I guess we'll just have to see how that plays out throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, you watched Oregon last week, too, and I mean, I made the statement off the air that I said this team may win the Pac-10 by 3 games. I mean, who is going to be with them? Who's going to be competitive with them? Who's going to take a one-loss Pac-10 record into the final week or 2 of the season along with them? And I don't necessarily see anybody doing it. You look at them on paper, unless Darren Thomason is an inexperienced quarterback, ends up costing Oregon, it's going to be hard to see them losing, particularly in the Pac-10. Now, I mean, in these leagues, Stanford could jump up and pop them. Oregon State in the Civil War could certainly be Oregon. I mean, think about it. This is a league, the Pac-10, I think, that has so much parity. Now, is Oregon a step ahead of everybody else? It looks like right now, but it's tough to go out and project anybody to run the table, particularly with a rather inexperienced quarterback leading the way like they have.
Well, Dari, thank you for coming on and talking a little college football for this enormous college football Saturday that takes place tomorrow. We would love to talk to you in a few weeks when the Oklahoma Sooners take on Texas and Dallas.
I'm always up for it, Dan. Thank you.
Okay, well, have a safe trip to Charlotte.
Okay, thank you.
All right, bye. And check out the sportsatlas.us for all the up-to-date sports information regarding odds and spreads.